Here you go, bro. Stay safe out there.
Thank you, thank you. Bro. What the fuck?
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
This tastes awful.
Performer 8 review.
This is the Performer. Oh. Yo, what's up, guys? This is the Performer 8, and it costs $1,000. Just kidding. But they look very premium, and if someone told me they costed $1,000, well, frankly, I would have believed them. But does it sound better than my Monarchs and my 69-core Dragon Scale cable?
Bruh.
No. But they sound pretty amazing,
Wow.
though, and it doesn't cause a power outage when I try to drive them, so my electricity bills are very, very happy. The overall sound is balanced, clean, effortless, but with a little twist, of course, or else it just sounds boring. Genres like indie, bands, acoustic, and ballads sound very natural on these, and the mid-range has a forward presentation and a little intimate. Artists like Big Thief, Pink Floyd, Lana Del Rey all sound incredibly musical, and you can crank up the immersion since these are incredibly smooth actually. Now remember that twist I mentioned?
No, not really.
On top of this natural presentation, vocals are also airy and has a glimmery and sparkly presentation to them. So kind of like the Dark Magician and Diva, but not as pronounced. For example, cymbal strikes on Model and The Strangest Thing sounds very airy, crisp, extended, and full of details without being too fatiguing, and doesn't mask other elements of the song. Violins, on the other hand, are rich and lush on Vivaldi. The strings are very dynamic, varying from mellow all the way to being very powerful, and you're not going to experience any of that thinness or light floaty note weight versus Moondrop, for example. But even though the vocals has that shimmering and sparkly characteristic, the Performer 8 does feel less open to me. Because of the lower 2K and 3K region, the sound doesn't really hit the ear gain, so it doesn't sound as powerful and full as the Orchestra Lite or even the Studio 4, for example. So even though the vocals are forward and airy, they don't fully extend because of the smoothed out 2K and 3K area. Now, some of you guys might like this because you might think the Harman ear gain might be too much, but for me personally, I would have liked a little bit more ear gain. Not too much like the Blessing 3, but just a little more like the Kiwis. The vocals aren't bad by any means, but I would like just a little more openness, which is why I'm giving it a B instead of anything higher. For example, on busier tracks like Flower Town and Traces of Time, instruments and vocals kind of melt together, which is nice, but also frustrating because, you know, things aren't as obvious and clear. The great part about this flat tuning is that the overall sound is very harmonic and very smooth, but it also makes the micro details harder to pick out from one another. So I guess that would be the drawback of this tuning. Now, stage-wise, the boosted 500 and 1K region does make the presentation feel a little bit smaller because vocals and instruments are closer and pushed more forward, so it feels a little bit closer. Soundstage is still average to above average, somewhere around there, and it's not holographic like the EJ07s or expansive like the Z1R U12Ts or even extra airy like the Dunu SA6 Mark II. But it's enough, it's not crowded, and you have enough room to pick out individual instruments. However, I do want to mention that separation and imaging does take a slight hit because the tuning is very just flat and nothing sticks out from one another, so it's hard to separate individual instruments. That would be one of the nitpicks that I have for the Performer 8, is that other IEMs near its price like the Blessing 3 has better separation and imaging. I also didn't realize the P8 had a dynamic driver in it because the bass is, well, let's just say I thought it was an all BA set.
You stupid.
Oops. Especially after hearing the Studio 4s, but more on that next week. Mid-bass wise, it's fast, clean, well separated, no bleed, no mask, but the sub-bass, it's lacking. It's lacking that rumble. Comparing it to the Blessing 3, which has a similar low end, the double Ds in the Blessing 3 presents the bass as more tactile, cleaner, better separated, and you can pick out the texture better. This is very obvious when I EQ'd both of them, but yeah, the bass, It's alright, does its job, not a bass
Oh,
set,
come
which
on,
is
man.
fine because it works very well for the Performer 8 sound since it's very smooth and balanced, but I'm just nitpicking here because I like bass. Now, I would only skip the Performer 8 if you want an energetic and engaging and lively sound, or your library has a lot of hip-hop, EDM, rhythm sections such as tracks like Good Kid Mad City, Juggernaut, Polyphia, anything like that. You would be better off with a quartet. But I will say, out of all the $500 IEMs that I've heard, Performer 8 has probably one of the best treble. It's up there with Studio 4s. Now, the real question is, since there was so much hype for this set, did the Performer 8 change the game? No. But it does justify its hype for me. It's my pick under $400 for an all-rounder, the combination of timbre, tuning, and technicalities. It does everything very well, but it just doesn't specialize in anything, which is fine because there are other sets like the Kiwi Ears Orchestra Light, for example, if you wanted a more natural vocal presentation, or if you want a more low end and bass, you can get the quartet, or if you want the sharpest resolution, you can go for the Blessing 3. So it does have its own spot in the market, but it also has very fierce competition with the Blessing 3 desk on its way and many other sets in the price bracket. Even though this is the case, I think Aful, yes, it's pronounced Aful and not a fool or awful. Cell did a very great job with this. The Performer 8 reminds me of a mini SA6 Ultra or SA6 Mark II, but I actually prefer more because the vocals are more forward, unlike the Ultras and the Mark II, which can be a little bit recessed for me, but they do have better air and just a little bit more detail than the Performer 8. But then again, it also costs $200 more, so the Performer 8 is definitely not a slouch when it comes to details. If you have a lot of J-Rock or J-Pop in your library, I actually think the Performer 8 is a pretty solid choice because it helps tame the energetic upper mids as well as make the female vocals sound less thin and more meaty. Yorushika, for example, sounds a lot smoother and natural on the Performer 8 versus the Blessing 3. And if you're a ballad lover like myself, then I would still get the Kiwis because the Kiwis just have that extra little bit of ear gain, which makes vocals sound more open, extended, and natural, just more emotional in general. For their next IEM, I would love it if Afu could improve on the separation and imaging side of the Performer 8 and maybe add another dynamic driver to increase that sub-bass texture, and I think it would be perfect. If you want anyone to work with, Afu, I'm just saying, I'm free. But yeah, it's another great set. Overall, I would give the technicality an A, the tuning A+. Add that together with the B from the vocal and you get an overall ranking of an A, which is really good, by the way. My recommendations for those who have a cheaper IEM in the $50 range, I would just skip the $100, $200, $250 and jump straight to the Performer 8, Blessing 3, or even the Orchestra Light. But I do have more stuff coming in, including the Performer 5. I'll do a comparison for you guys, but for now,